There we go. All right. So, hello, everybody who's logged in, and welcome. My name is Angie Williams. I am the membership director for for OFO, and I'm trying to watch the meeting room while I talk here, the waiting room, and let people in. I hope everybody can hear me all right. And I would like to especially welcome those who are joining us who are not actually members of OFO. We're glad you're here, and I would love for you to join our group. I will put the website in the chat, and you can check it out. So, consecutive big years. Who doesn't love a big year story, right? A rewatch of the movie A Big Year inspired Jerry and Ellen Horak to get off the couch and start listing birds back in 2013. And it quickly became their passion. Now, I will say, my husband and I, when we're out looking for birds, even if we don't see any, we say, well, at least, we're not on the couch. You don't see birds very much on your couch. So there you go. Ellen and Jerry immersed themselves in OFO trips and in Hamilton Naturalists Club outings and Peely bird walks, soaking in as much knowledge as they could over the years. In 2022, it escalated in Ellen suggesting they do not one, not two, but three consecutive big years at the county, provincial, and country level. So that's pretty ambitious. So in 2023, the goal was over 200 in Brant County. That was their goal. And then they wanted to get 300 in Ontario in 2024. And then they wanted to get over 400 across Canada. While not chasing the records, they still pushed themselves as far past the initial goal as they could, while still balancing their family responsibilities. And I would like to welcome Ellen here to share what she says is a smidgen of the last 3 years. Because how do you put 3 years into an hour, right? But we're going
Exactly.
to give it a good try. So, Ellen, thank you so much for coming and sharing your stories. And I'm going to ask if people have questions. Go ahead and type them in the chat or save them until later. And at the end, we'll have some Q&A. And I'll just turn everything over to Ellen.
Thank you. Thank you to OFO and to Angie for inviting me to share our 3-year journey with you. I'm recovering from a cold, so I'm hoping my coughing will stay in check for the next 45 minutes. In 2022, we birded pretty hard in Ontario, and we ended up seeing 285 species. And then we drove out west in the summer, seeing 370 across Canada. And I realized that we were close to big year numbers. We were 1 year into caring for Jerry's mom, Bubby, with Alzheimer's, so world travel was restricted, and I was looking for a goal to mark turning 65 in 2023. I came up with the idea of 3 consecutive big years, allowing us to trial it at the county level first to see if it was something we really wanted to commit to at the province and country level. The goals of 200, 300, and 400 were absolutely achievable. Some might even suggest too easy to be classified as big years, because in Ontario, a dozen or more people hit 300 every year without really planning, by just chasing every bird they can. I knew we would go over the goal as far as we could, but caregiving would limit us to try for the records. These numbers seemed like a nice balance. I had to set some parameters with Jerry, though, in the beginning to get him to agree to do this. Number one, family would always come first. We would not be chasing the records. I am very competitive, so this needed to be stated numerous times. It had to be fun and not stressful. Okay, there were stressful times, of course, but for the most part, it remained fun. We had to be efficient to get the most birds in the least amount of time with the least amount of travel, so it would require lots of planning, not just reacting to reports. We wanted to be as sustainable as possible while doing something completely unsustainable. We would not chase common species unless absolutely necessary. We would play the odds based on my research when deciding what to chase or not. We would try to get a picture of every bird we saw, and the mantra for the 3 years was, we get the bird or we don't get the bird, and it's all about timing. No blame, no stress, no regret. Most of my planning revolved around eBird reports. I spent hours and hours looking at where all the more difficult species were found and then looked at the illustrated checklists for birding hotspots. In this example, you can see that your odds of seeing buff-breasted sandpiper at beaten 10th line is 66.7% the last week of August. That information would go on the calendar, so I did not miss a bird. Then I compiled Excel sheets for Ontario and Canada. The Ontario one had lists of the common birds, birds I would get spring migration, fall migration, the birds that would require special trips, and the possible rarities that could show up. I had a column to check off birds as they were seen, so no common species got forgotten. For the Canada year, I ranked the birds 1 to 6, with 1 being common in Ontario and 3 being common in the rest of Canada. And I added a column for each province's birds where they would be seen, so that because there are many overlaps, and again, a column to check off each bird seen. I made a calendar that had the 52 weeks and what we should be looking for each week. I also kept track of kilometers driven, walked, and costs of our travel. I researched and read the blogs of all the birders that had done big years and talked with many birders who happily shared information about doing big years, and I thank them all. I made lists of birds to chase and where and when they had been seen in past years for all the trips. I started a blog in 2024 and made up business cards to hand out so people could get in touch if they had info on birds to pass along. I signed up for all the needs alert on eBird the year before so that I could see what birds were being seen and where before I planned where we would go. We purchased park passes to the tune of about $500 each year. We were on Discord for all the provinces, OFO, Hawk Watches, Facebook groups across the country. And at the end of all the planning, you just turn over control to the birds, maybe showing up or not. Every year is different. On average, 230 species are seen in Brant County each year. And in 2022, I had seen 199, so I knew I would get the 200 by just doing what I had already done. But how far past could we get? We birded Brant often, and so we knew where to get the expected species that we got every year. We also have excellent local birders in the Le Mans and Pizzies who bird very hard in Brant, and so we knew we had a lot of help. There's nothing better than having a great bird show up in your yard, and this red-shouldered hawk has visited us 6 years in a row. We were also lucky to have help finding 3 species of owls in 1 week in February. Our 100th bird came on April 5th, a Vesper sparrow. And the rarest bird of the year was this Henslow sparrow on territory in Brant for a week or so. Only a very few birders were given the location, as this is a sensitive species. On September 27th, we hit the 200th species with a blue-headed vireo, and that same day, Jerry saw a gray-cheeked thrush that I did not. He had been ahead of me by 1 bird the previous year in Brant and Ontario, and I had hoped it would not happen again. I was right there when he saw the bird. There were also Swainson's thrush around, and despite my best effort, I could not see a gray-cheeked. I could have just added it. I was literally standing next to him. But I point out this story so people understand my desire to be a principled, ethical birder. If I don't see or hear the bird, it is not added to my list. It is one of the reasons why we try to take pictures of what we see, so there's no doubt in my mind after the fact, or in other birders' minds, that we saw a bird. Did it upset me that he ended up ahead of me? Oh, yes, it did. I am very competitive, as I said. But in the end, it was just a number and just a bird. We chased rarities the rest of the year and ended up with 210 and 209, 90% seen out of a total of 231 species in Brant County. Bill and Jason held the top spot with 221, Jerry was second, and Jenny and I were tied for third. Despite an escalation in caregiving for Bubby involving daily calls and physical visits every 2 to 3 days, we opted to start our Ontario year. On average, there are 370 species seen on Ontario, and Kai Jasper holds the record at 359. The plan for the year was rarities chased first, then wintering ducks, owls, geese, winter trips north for boreal species in ptarmigan, then concentrate on rails, early migrants, shorebirds returning early spring. Because of caregiving, we could only do 3 to 4 days at Peely at a time, but ideally we wanted to spend at least a few weeks in total. And then a trip to Rainy River is a must. Summer quiets down, and then in August, September, shorebirds return, and lake watches for Jaeger gulls start. Rarities rule the day during the last months. We opted not to travel to Moosinee and James Bay because of caregiving and the likelihood of only adding 1 or 2 species. If we were trying for the record, there was no option to opt out. Sorry, I just lost my notes here. In 2024, there were lots of rarities around January 1st. I planned to see 5 on the very first day. Silly me. We started in Ottawa for the Western Tanager, waited 2.5 hours, -10 temps, no bird. Second rarity, Townsend Solitaire, no bird. By this time, we could only make 1 more stop before dusk. So after a 2-kilometer run down the beach at 4:30, we finally had 1 rarity, a Barrow's goldeneye. It was a good lesson to learn that first day, to stop thinking every bird would be sitting waiting for us, and to dial down the planning. The Barrows ended up staying there for months after. In the first week, we birded from Ottawa to various spots on Lake Ontario, home, then Peely, Erie, Toronto, London, and Hamilton, and then back to Wheatley for the Limkin at the beginning of week 2, picking up most of the rarities. It was a cold winter, and we spent many hours shivering by the lakes. And in Algonquin, we had temps in the morning of -30, but every bird added was a shot of adrenaline moving us towards the goal. We saw our 100th species, an evening grosbeak in Algonquin, and then headed back to Ottawa for our second and third attempt to finally get the Western Tanager. We also had the good fortune to see a barred owl with its freshly caught red squirrel. One of the highlights of the year was going up to Cochrane, where Angie and Ken are, and driving Detour Mine Road for willow ptarmigan and actually finding them. Just before we left, Jerry had knocked his camera off the table, and it broke. But luckily, we had a backup that did the job for us on our road trip. We also saw the 2 difficult woodpeckers to get in Ontario after spending hours walking the edge of the ice road and retreating to the car to warm up before getting out and trying again. We had spectacular looks at spruce grouse along the roads. Our 150th bird was a northern hawk owl. It was a bit of a nemesis bird by mid-February, having made 11 attempts in 7 locations throughout northern Ontario and not finding one. Finally, we made the drive to Ottawa, and the bird was right off the road, allowing us great looks. We chatted with other birders for a while, then stopped to see some snow geese further down the road, and since it was only 11 a.m., we opted to drive back home instead of incurring another hotel cost. 10 hours of driving, 1 hour of birding, 2 species added. Big years force you to do things you might not normally do, like scanning through flocks of thousands of redheads for 5 hours looking for the one Eurasian widgeon that has been reported. We didn't end up finding it that day, but saw one at Long Point a few days later. And suddenly it was spring, and Jerry was on his game taking photos. Spring birding during a big year gets crazy really quickly and stays crazy until the end of May. There will be multiple rarities and decisions to make, and you never know where you will end up on any given day. One Saturday, we had multiple possibilities of where to bird, east or west, but opted to head west to Peely as we were both awake at 4 a.m. And then, of course, a glossy ibis was found near Aurelia at noon. We left Peely and chased it and hit rush hour traffic. Reports said the bird had flown. We were making decisions as we sat on the highway. Do we give up? Keep going? We started nagging at each other. We were tired, hungry. We ended up staying the course, and the bird was refound on another road. We saw the bird at 5:35 as soon as we pulled up. Always love when that happens. Of course, many glossy ibises showed up later in the year, including at Peely while we were there a week later. But in the moment, you do not know for sure, so you have to chase and chase. We had been up at 4 a.m., drove 10 hours, hiked 9 kilometers, and were back home at 8:30. The next day, we did a similar drive to the same area for a possible green shank that turned out to be just a yellowlegs. Such is spring birding. We managed to spend 22 days at Peely in April and May, but broken up with caregiving time between trips. eBird research told me the highest chance for American avocets was April 22nd to the 26th, and so we were at the tip on April 23rd when Jerry yelled out, "American avocets." I love the predictability of eBird. The last week in April, after having spent 4 days at Peely, we came home, and the next day everything arrived. Kentucky, worm eating, chats, Henslow's sparrow, snowy egret. It was difficult to continue caregiving in Hamilton while so many good birds were being seen at Peely and Rondo. We finished up early, headed back to Peely, and managed to get the Kentucky warbler at dusk. We would end up not adding worm eating or Henslow's to our list for the year. Car picnics, microwave dinners, and takeout became the norm for 2 years. May 2nd, we headed home from Peely, but detoured up to Red Bay chasing a tricolored heron that we did not re-find. The next day, we chased a tufted duck at the Exeter sewage lagoons and got absolutely soaked in the process, but thankfully found the bird. On the 4th, we were in Guelph at 6:30 a.m., hearing a yellow rail make its stone-clicking call. And on the 5th, we chased and saw a tricolored heron up at Wasaga Beach, adding an upland sandpiper as a bonus. We fit in some caregiving somehow during all of that, and then headed back to Peely on May 6th. Downtime was not an option. There were many days where you are pulled in different directions at Peely. At the tip one day, a report came in of a white-faced ibis at Hillman, and we started running. It was also the day the tram was not working, so we walked the 2 kilometers back to the car. As we drove over to Hillman, a report comes from the tip of a Eurasian collared dove and a yellow-throated warbler flying off. So we missed 2 birds to get 1. We saw the white-faced ibis that ended up staying around for another day, of course, and we never managed to add the dove to our list. But we do end up getting the warbler in the fall. It is all about timing. Birds could often be so far away that it felt like we didn't even see the bird. Our only look at a western cattle egret in 2024 was this white blob in the field for a minute. And the only reason we knew the bird we could see in the scope on the boat was a brown booby is because a person on the boat was posting to Discord that the brown booby was indeed sitting on that mast. There was a discussion about counting that bird or not, but other birds told us we absolutely should. Other birds were so close we almost stepped on them, like this red knot that was hunkered behind a log. We had to back away quickly to make sure it did not fly away for other birders coming down the beach behind us. Our trip to Rainy River gave us our 300th species, black-billed magpie, and our worst experience with ticks, and our best experience with our self-found lifer great gray owl, and one of the best 3 minutes of our lives. Just us and the owl. Unfortunately, we were in our car looking through the windscreen in a rainstorm, but still an absolutely breathtaking moment. We had our best interactions with a common loon right beside the shore and a mourning warbler singing a few feet from us. The summer months got very quiet and gave us a chance to rest and relax a bit, and then we were back out in August for migrating shorebirds and rails. August was also the start of lake watching. I'm not sure how many hours we logged at the lake, but it seemed like a lot. I could now tell the difference between gulls and Jaegers, most of the time, and had some of the best views of Jaegers we have ever had. Two went right past me on the beach while I was videoing a ruddy turnstone one day, and I was in such awe I didn't get my video camera up in time. We spent hours at sewage lagoons, Van Wagner's Beach, and the Niagara River, and still had rarities to chase like the cinnamon teal at the Grimsby wetlands. Late September, we ventured north for the OFO conference and had the incredible luck to see boreal owls banded. We even got to release one. I counted this bird, even though the ABA has this convoluted description about when a bird is unrestrained and under the influence of captivity or not. I polled a number of birders that all said counted. The black-tailed gull in October was the only time we left Bubby to chase a bird. We had just arrived to cook and clean for her when the report came in, and we quickly left her to make the 2-hour drive, saw the bird, chatted for a few minutes, and then drove back again in time to cook her dinner. All was good, as she didn't remember that we had been there earlier. The short-tailed shearwater in November was another absolute must to chase, but we spent most of our time on the phone with Bubby while standing on the beach. The delusions and confusion had escalated over the past months, and we were stressed to the max, and I was contemplating announcing on the blog that we would just not be able to do the Canada 400 year the way things currently were. We added black-legged kittiwake and black-throated gray warbler at the beginning of December, giving us 334 species. Bubby was admitted to hospital mid-December, and doctors decided she could not live alone any longer. While we worked with home health about possible placements, her ward was shut down because of COVID just after Christmas. And suddenly, we had some free time, and so we planned one final chase to finish the year. And this happened on December 30th. Gray-crowned rosy finch, 335. In 2024, there were 377 species seen in Ontario, and we saw 335 of them, or 89% of the birds reported. We were in the #1 spot in Ontario, and we saw 5 lifers. We birded in every one of the 50 counties in Ontario, and it was a complete success as far as I was concerned. Of the 42 birds we missed, 21 were not chaseable, one-day wonders or not reported until the bird had left, or just flybys. 6 birds we decided were too far to chase or we did not have enough time. 4 birds I regret not going for: Eurasian tree sparrow in Ottawa, the Kirtland's warbler in Niagara, white-winged dove in Thunder Bay, and lark bunting in Sault Ste. Marie. 11 birds we tried for and missed. With Bubby going to memory care, the stress of caregiving lessened, and we could do the Canada 400 year after all. There are on average 539 species seen in Canada every year. Bruce DeLabio holds the record at 480. The plan, after much research on eBird, was driving from one end of Canada to the other and taking one plane trip to BC in the winter. We would bird every province but not the territories. We would chase birds when we were in the location, but there would not be any getting on planes to chase birds. We would start in Ontario, then fly to BC in February for a week, spring in Ontario, drive west in June and spend June and July out in BC, back to Ontario for August, and then out east for September, and then maybe a winter trip to Quebec. We would not need to chase the usual rarities in Ontario that we would see in other provinces, so that would make things easier. We started January 1st, where we left off in 24, near Kirtland Lake, and added gray-crowned rosy finch for our first rarity of the year, plus a Harris's sparrow on that first day too. January, February, we were busy moving Bubby into memory care and emptying a very full 3-bedroom condo, so we could rent it. We contented ourselves with seeing the common species and chasing a few rarities. We chased a bird that I'd regretted not chasing in Ottawa last year, a Eurasian tree sparrow, and got it. Our views were not great, but on the list it went. And white-fronted goose was an easier get than last year. As usual, January, February was owl time, and we saw all the easy species. Last year, we had a 3-owl week, And this year, we had a 3 owl day, seeing a snowy, short-eared, and screech all on January 22nd. We flew to Vancouver for 10 days at the end of January and had our first lifer of the year early the next morning. It was a jam-packed itinerary, hoping to see 40 species in 10 days on the island and mainland Vancouver, including chasing down this mega rarity, a green-tailed towhee in Victoria. It was wonderful to find these lifers and get decent pictures. We also saw lifer ancient murrelets, but did not get a picture as they were scope views. We had fantastic interactions with beautiful harlequin ducks, vocal black oyster catchers, and a loudly singing American dipper. And much better views of snow geese and Barrow's goldeneye than we get in Ontario. The bush tits entertained us with their song and frantic movement through the shrubs. Instead of a break from our cold winter in Ontario, we experienced BC's only winter storm and were faced with foot-high drifts halfway through our trip with only running shoes. We tried to chase a black phoebe stumbling through snow for an hour, but never found it. Likely it had perished. The next day, we resorted to plastic bags in our runners instead of having wet, cold feet like the day before. One consolation was the yummy breakfasts included at our hotel. Unlike last year with the 11 attempts at a northern hawk owl, we were lucky to be around the corner from one near Boundary Bay and saw it on our second attempt. We headed home having seen 32 of the 40 species. Notable misses were yellow-billed loon, barn owl, and gyrfalcon. We had seen 5 lifers. We were at 160 species February 5th. I was okay with that. It is always awesome when you can find your own owls, and late February on a walk at Gilkinson's Flats in Brantford, I saw 2 lumps in a tree that turned out to be 2 long-eared owls. I had to share them with our grandkids who live 5 minutes away. We did not see a red-throated loon out in BC because of distance, so it was nice to get beautiful pictures of this one in Port Rowan. And we found the American woodcock in the campground at Long Point, giving us the best views we have had of that species. We chased a blue grosbeak up near Lake Simcoe and then had this lovely brown thrasher show up for Jerry's birthday in our backyard in April. And suddenly it was spring and time for Peely again. We finally had a cottage this year for the first 2 weeks in May, but went down the last week in April for 3 days for those early migrants. The birding was fantastic as always, and it was for the most part a repeat of last year, except we did not have to run and chase everything if we would see it out west or out east. Peely is always a similar routine. Up at 4 a.m., at the tip by dawn, walk 15 to 20 kilometers, chase birds you need, take a break late afternoon to eat, and then back in the park for the evening. Then sort through pictures and do the blog and fall into bed by 10 to do it all over again the next day. April 30th, a report came in of a scissor-tail flycatcher in Toronto, and we made plans to go the next day, but we had a sick grandchild to watch, so we didn't go, and it got eaten by a Cooper's hawk in the afternoon. May 1st, another one was reported at Peely. We were heading there the next day, and so we went immediately to the beach, first thing in the morning, but a rainstorm must have pushed it off, and the bird was not there. Then, May 4th, we had left Peely and driven to Rondo, chasing a worm-eating warbler, and there's a report of a scissor-tail flycatcher at Long Point, only 2 hours away, and a third chance. We had to go. When we arrived, we headed to the beach and ran with other birders up the beach, trying to get to the bird that was flying back and forth quite long distances. Birders were running towards us, would point and shout where the bird was flying. We would all run this way and that way. It would have made a great comedy video. We were gasping for breath, and at last it rested long enough for us to have a few quick looks and photos before it took off again. A bonus was a singing prairie warbler a minute from the flycatcher, and then we faced the 3-hour drive back to Peely. We stopped at Blenheim on the way back for a Wilson's phalarope and came in the door to the cottage just before 6 with a pizza in hand, and then heard the Discord ding. A snowy egret just 45 minutes away. We dropped everything and ran back out to the car. It was pouring rain. Halfway there, Jerry says, "I don't have my camera." It was on the table in the cottage. I don't have mine either. We had not grabbed our birding bag. We had iPhones, that would have to do. And so here is our wonderful picture of a snowy egret. And that's Jude Szabo with us, who is doing his own Ontario Big Year this year and is at 350. The next day, we added yellow-throated warbler to the list. And that evening, Quentin heard a Chuck's Will's widow near the tip. A few birders got out to see it before a thunderstorm. The next morning, it was heard again. But despite many people checking the area where it was heard, no one finds its roosting spot. The evening of May 6th, many people congregate on the road to the tip and wait for dusk. And just at dark, it flies in over the group from behind and lands on this branch, almost posing for us and in a spot that allows everyone in the group to see it. It was a fantastic experience to share with other birders. We heard an eastern whippoorwill from nearby Sparrow Field, but Jerry did not hear it. We try for whippoorwill a few more times at Peely, but we don't hear one, and so I am one bird ahead of him until we head up to Rainy River, where we assume he will get one. We had fantastic views of cuckoos, a bird that can often be difficult to find and see. And American pelicans put on a show at Peely this year, landing at the tip multiple times. On May 16th, the last day at Peely, we were just wandering a trail in Tilden when a report came in of a worm-eating warbler. It was not a birder I recognized. They can often be misidentified, but we had nothing to lose, and it was just back around the corner from where we were. We gathered a few other birders as we made our way back down, and then found a number of people trying to re-find it. It had been singing, which helped confirm that indeed there was a worm-eating warbler somewhere in that foliage. They are a very skulky bird, spending time on the ground, so it was a challenge. Many of us were basically down on our hands and knees, trying to peer into the branches. Finally, it was spotted, and we managed to get decent looks. Jerry somehow managed that wonderful picture. We started our west trip on June 1st with 302 species seen, and our first stop in Wawa, we found two rarities from out west. Normally, we would be amazed at finding a western kingbird and a western tanager together in Ontario, but at the same time, we were heading west where we knew we would see many, but we took it as a very good omen for the start of our trip. From Wawa, we drove to Rainy River. We wanted very badly to actually see a Connecticut warbler, since this remains a herd-only bird for us. But we do not use playback as a rule, especially on breeding grounds. So despite hours walking and driving the road, we still only heard them singing. A sighting of one will have to wait for another year. We had excellent views of LeConte's sparrow and sedge wrens and heard yellow rails at dawn along Wilson Creek Road, the traditional site for them. Brewer's blackbirds, Wilson's phalarope. And after seeing a great gray owl for the first time in 2024, I assumed there would be years before I would see another. But instead, we saw three. Two were a pair seen on opposite sides of the main road, and a third hunting near Wilson Creek Road the next day. Jerry finally added eastern whippoorwill that night, and our count was even. Then it was on to Chaplin Lake, Francis Lake, and Reed Lake in Saskatchewan, where we added 12 species. A few herd-only birds were Baird sparrow and chestnut-collared longspur. Jerry excelled with the camera. We headed next to Grasslands National Park for a few days, where we added another 9 species. We stayed in this super cute tiny house in Val Marie. Swainson's hawks are as prolific as our red-tails. This burrowing owl greeted us at the gate to the grasslands. We heard Brewer's sparrow, but it would be a while before we managed a picture of one. We also missed a picture of Sprague's pipits, although we heard and saw them a few times. So many birds to see and photograph. None of these birds were lifers for us, as we have traveled out west a number of times before, and fairly extensively in the US. Just before heading into BC, we stopped for a prairie falcon, our 340th species. They nest in the coulees south of Calgary. We were in first place in Canada, with lots more birds to add. My brother's compound in Grand Forks was our home base for a few weeks, and his property netted us many common species while sipping margaritas on the patio. My absolute favorite way to bird. Bears were a daily occurrence outside the gates of the compound as they came down from the hills to feed on berries close by, and rattlesnakes are found in the area when we are out hiking. It means you need to stay aware of your surroundings all the time and just cannot focus on the birds. Two of the rarer, tougher birds to get were Williamson's sapsucker and gray flycatcher. We have both seen both of these birds before on previous trips, so we knew where to go. Unfortunately, Jerry did not manage to get good pictures of either of them, but good enough for a record. The sage thrasher is perhaps the rarest bird in Canada, with a population suggested between 7 and 36 individuals. It is only found in a small area of the Okanagan and was a Canadian lifer for us and one of the birds I really wanted to add to my list this year. Birders on Discord had given me specifics down to what trail to walk on, but there were no guarantees, as some birders had told me of multiple attempts and they still hadn't got it. We took the loop trail that was suggested, headed one way, and after 30 minutes realized it just was not the right habitat. We turned back and headed the opposite way and finally found ourselves in sagebrush. It was super hot, and I was discouraged that we'd wasted time. So I spent some time as we walked composing a blog in my head as to why and how we had missed getting a sage thrasher and how hard it was to get fourth ranked birds. And suddenly a sage thrasher flew up from my feet. I had flushed it. We had spectacular views and great pictures. I still can't quite believe we actually saw one in Canada. Things went downhill for a bit after the sage thrasher. We were trying for harder birds now, having seen most of the common species. We stayed in the Kelowna area for a few days and tried for flim-luted owl and western screech owl. Nothing heard for 2 nights. Black-backed and three-toed woodpecker in the Burnet Rose Regional Park? Nothing. Dusky grouse up the mountain roads? Nothing. Clark's grebe at Salmon Arm? Nothing. We came up empty with all of them. On the last night, we headed out to try for the owls a last time and met up with Ontario birders Jeremy and James. And after scoping out a few spots, we went to the area we had previously had them, and we all had a tiny owl fly out and about before disappearing back into the nest hole. Finally, we had managed to get one of the targets. On the way to the coast, we stopped at Manning Park, where we finally saw a sooty grouse. We spent a few days near Boundary Bay trying for the barn owl again and came up short, but picked up a few target species in the Burnaby area. We visited Stanley Park one day, and while the park is spectacular with plenty of birds, we only added one new species, a black-throated gray warbler, that we only heard at the very tops of trees. We moved on to the island and missed an acorn woodpecker. And then the next day, a bar-tailed godwit and Pacific plover were reported at Boundary Bay, where we had just been. And so we took the ferry back again the next day. What's another $200? We spent hours waiting for the tide to come in and saw the lifer bar-tailed godwit, but not the plover, just before rushing back to grab the last ferry back to the island. We had many encounters with bears, but all calm and uninterested in us, thankfully. We went out on a boat from Tofino, but were disappointed not to get our targets of tufted puffin or Hermann's gull, both very expected species to be seen, but late arriving this year. So when the acorn woodpecker was reported again, we quickly changed travel plans and raced back to Victoria and saw the acorn woodpecker. It meant staying in the outrageously priced Hotel Z, the only room available in Victoria on a Saturday night in July. We headed back to the mainland and missed on our third attempt at a black phoebe then headed to Kelowna for another attempt at western screech owl, having received some more intel from a birder we met at the Acorn Woodpecker site. We walked a trail in the city at dusk and stopped near the place we had been given. I looked over, and there was a screech owl sitting on the branch.
Hey, we just got the screech owl. The western screech owl, alive from forest. Finally, we have owled so many nights waiting to get this. And finally, we saw it. It flew over our heads as well. Jerry was pretending to be a squeaky mouse. And so it was the coolest experience. No picture, but it doesn't matter. Dark it was, as it is now. We're so happy that we got it.
Next, we traveled to Jasper. The horror of the fire from last year is still fresh and devastating to see. We did get both woodpeckers, black-backed and three-toed, in the burn areas. We took the tram up to the Whistler Summit for white-tailed ptarmigan. It was cold, rainy, windy, and we almost gave up. We walked up the summit trails 3 times in the thin air and around the paths looking for any movement or shape for almost 6 hours. Not an easy task as they blend in well. I did not want to give up, but we came close, the only time tears of frustration were shed. One last attempt, and finally Jerry caught some movement out in the alpine meadow, and there were 2 white-tailed ptarmigans. That was a tough get. We witnessed this incredible battle between an eastern kingbird showing its crown in anger and a Swainson's hawk who screamed every time the kingbird landed and pecked him. We had one more attempt for a dusky grouse at Waterton National Park before we headed home. We hiked and then drove along the road where they had been reported, and I spotted that distinct shape, and there was our lifer dusky grouse with 2 young, and as it seems to work, I found another one a short distance up the road minutes later. The west trip netted us 95 more birds and 4 lifers, leaving us at 396 species for the year. I had hoped to be at 400 out west, but there were a lot more misses than I expected. August gave us a chance to relax a bit. One morning, while we were still in bed having a tea, there was a Discord ding and a report from Nathan Hood. I just saw Redshank, Cambridge on my phone and yelled to Jerry as I jumped out of bed. I knew it was good. Didn't know where, but we were out of the house in about 5 minutes, and the location was only 10 minutes away from us. The spotted redshank is likely the bird of the year for us in terms of rarity. On August 29th, we saw our 400th species, a buff-breasted sandpiper, at our local sod farms. September 1st, we drove east and stopped in Quebec to add a ruff, and then started adding species as we took ferry after ferry through New Brunswick and over to Briar Island in Nova Scotia, where we added a wood stork that had been hanging around for a while, and took 2 whale watching tours to add a lifer South Polar skua. The Gros Morne hike for rock ptarmigan had been on my mind all year, having watched many videos about the grueling hike. I had planned to do it on my 67th birthday, but we changed it to the day before because of better weather. The hike is 17 kilometers and takes 7 to 8 hours, including a long climb up a rock scramble to get to the summit, and then a rough, tedious climb down. We started at 7:30, climbed the rock scramble with lots of effort, arriving at the summit 4 hours later, but still feeling pretty good. Thankfully, this ptarmigan did not take 6 hours to find. When we got to the alpine meadow, just off the summit, we started scanning, and within minutes I saw the shape of a ptarmigan standing on rocks quite a distance away. We walked closer, and then found 4 rock ptarmigan making their way towards us. We spent 2 hours with them, watching as they moved around, feeding, at times so close I could almost touch them. It was a fantastic experience, and one I probably will not repeat in my lifetime. I'm not doing that hike again. The hike down was the most difficult part, much longer, treacherous with rocks and branches to trip on, and we were depleted as well, close to running out of water. Thankfully, we met up with friends at the summit also doing the hike and hiked down with them, making it slightly more enjoyable. We had started at 7:30 a.m. and got back to the parking lot after 6 p.m. It was on to Trinity for a few days to meet up with friends and do some hiking. Our next target was the long-staying Stellar Sea Eagle. I had arranged a boat ride with a local near Green Harbor. We moved the date up as we were getting anxious about the weather, and it turned out to be a smart move. It was incredible to be in a boat feet away from this huge bird, just us and the boat owner. A sharp-tailed sandpiper had been reported an hour before from a nearby beach, only accessible with the boat, and the boat owner took us over to it, but could not get us close to the beach, so we could not see the piper from the boat with our bins. It was too late in the day to try and access it on foot, so a big miss, feet away from another lifer. We had also added a little blue heron to the list in Nova Scotia, and we got great views of a pink-footed goose in St. John's to make up for the dismal look of this lifer back in April in Ontario. We visited the northern gannet colony at Cape St. Mary's, where you can have close-up experiences of them flying over your head. We were searching for a willow ptarmigan family that had been reported over many days. Despite hours of searching, we could not find them, and so we gave up, figuring we would have to do the drive back up to Cochrane and get one in December. We drove out of the parking lot a few hundred feet. I looked to my right, and there were 5 willow ptarmigan out on the rocks. All about timing. We had seen all 3 ptarmigan species in Canada, which was one of my goals. Leaving Newfoundland, we had one more sea watch, and Jerry got my attention on a bird at the back of the boat. We both realized it was different from anything we had seen. We'd done a lot of sea watches by this time. Thankfully, Jerry managed a picture, and birders confirmed our suspicions that it was a northern fulmar, another lifer. We spent a very quick 5 hours on PEI so that we could say we had birded in every province, and managed to track down a gray partridge for a picture that we did not get out west, and stopped for Gallant's delicious crab cakes. We tried for a black-tailed gull in Quebec, but missed it and headed home. We added 20 more species, 5 of them lifers, and had reached 420 species. I was very happy with that number, but knew there were still Ontario birds we could add. Back in Ontario, we decided to chase the crested caracara, having missed this bird a few times in the spring near Chatham, and we did indeed get to see it for all of 5 minutes before it disappeared. That was a 16-hour driving day, as the weather did not cooperate. Hotels were booked and very expensive, so we opted to drive home the same day. We then added Nelson sparrow, western cattle egret, purple gallinule, gray kingbird, and a few common species we missed last winter, bringing us to today, 429. So as of today, there have been 540 species seen in Canada this year, and at 429, we've seen 79.5%. We are still currently number 1 in Canada, and there are only 4 of us over 400. There are still 4 weeks left, and birds that are still possible to see. I would like to add at least one more to round things at 430, but who knows what is in the cards. For updates, you'll have to visit my blog or look for me on Facebook. This journey has taken us coast to coast across Canada. There were lots of red chairs to sit in with breathtaking vistas. I made a point of sitting in every one and taking a few moments in each one to feel gratitude for the ability to travel and see our stunning, beautiful country. People always want to know the statistics, and while the Canada ones are not complete, they're close. We drive a Prius Prime, so we have 40 kilometers of electric and then a hybrid system, so our gas costs are less than the usual car, making our travel slightly more sustainable. We drove a bit less in the Canada year than Ontario, which seems counterintuitive, but makes sense because the Canada birding was not about chasing one bird over long distances. I expected to walk a lot more than we did, but there's a lot of birding done by car. Our travel was a mix of crappy $100 hotels up to $300, $400 upscale apartments with full kitchens and saunas. For our Canada year, we were away 16 weeks for the 20,000, which I think is pretty cheap. The takeaways. The amount of driving and sitting in your car is a lot. I thought I would be out birding so much more, but you are really sitting in your car, driving to a bird, waiting for a bird, scanning for birds from your car. I wish I had kept track of the hours in the car. We had hoped to become better birders, and we are. We know a lot more songs and calls of birds, and Merlin had helped us with that. We are better and quicker at IDing birds, and I am more confident in my IDs. I'm also more patient and willing to wait for a bird to appear. The connection to other birders was the best part of doing this. We made so many new friends, had so many people come up to us, know who we were, offer support, or pass along information. Big years are always a communal effort from the birding community, from reports of rarities in a timely manner, texting us to make sure we'd seen a report, to staying on birds for us, keeping them in a scope, encouraging us, supporting us, reading my blog. I love nothing better than when we can celebrate any birder's high five moments in the field. It is a fantastic community to be part of. And while the big years took up much of our time, it also kept us sane through the worst years of caregiving. Being out in nature allowed us to de-stress and only concentrate on finding a bird for a while. I mentioned at the beginning that you do all the planning and then you give up the control to the birds. And that's always been a difficult thing for me to do. My personality is not flexible, but I've learned to be flexible over and over again. Big years and breaking records has been traditionally a young man's game, but I hope that we've shown that anyone can set a goal and have it be a worthy goal within the parameters of your life. Technology, eBird has made it possible for even mediocre birders like us to find and see lots of birds. So don't be afraid to set a goal, make it public so you stick with it, and most importantly, have fun. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much.
Sorry, that was so long.
No. We're sitting on the edge of our seats here.
Yeah.
Ken, what was the word you said? Delightful. Delightful.
Thank
yes.
you.
Love a good big year story. And so
Yeah.
many great pictures. Oh, I want to
Yeah.
go birding right now.
Yeah.
I want to go out there.
I'd
Yes.
be a great horned owl.
I wonder if anybody has questions. I did put the OFO website in the chat. And also, I'm going to put in the chat a YouTube movie, a movie that's on YouTube that you just kind of reminded me about. I think it was called The Listers. Might just be called Listers.
Yes, it's fantastic. Yeah.
It's so funny. And talk about, you are not mediocre birders by any stretch.
Well, we think we are.
It's Listers, look it up, folks. It's got a lot of swearing, but other than that, it's really fun. It's these two guys who know nothing about birding at all and decide to do a big year. And it's hilarious.
Oh, yeah.
Listers. But I wonder if anyone has any questions. I don't think I have any questions.
No.
Do you have a question?
No, they answered it all.
You answered it all.
That's good. I guess that's a good sign of a good presentation.
I think I actually saw a Clark's nuthatcher.
Where does she live?
Cracker.
I guess it's Brandon County. I thought she was close to Cambridge.
Oh. Oh, she'd be interesting to come as a speaker, wouldn't she?
All right, I am going to stop the recording right now. Oh, Maria's just entering the room. Maria, you just came.
Would you do it
right
would
now.
you do it? Would you do it again?
Would we do it again? No, I am not.